And 3, 2, 1. Incandescent. Vasily led the ambassadors down the granite corridor of the keep's entranceway, his thoughts consumed by the rug. Thick woven and well worn, it cushioned the three men's footsteps as they walked, footfalls padding softly behind him. In stark contrast, one of the men, a wizard, Vasily assumed, had positioned himself so close to the edge of the rug that his gnarled wooden staff clacked audaciously on the bare stone bricks. Its copper-wrought base tattooed a regular impact which echoed and reverberated into a wash of sound upon which Vasily's mind floated lazily. The padding of soft footsteps, the two men behind him walking in sync with an even measured gait, his own steps just out of rhythm. Step, 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 clack, 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 clack. Step, 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 clack, 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 clack. The centre of the hallway was aligned perfectly between the outer edges of two flagstones, straight as an arrow, all the way from the keep's heavy oaken front gates to the cast iron doors of the keep's grand hall. The rug, to Vasily's frustration, was just overlapping the rightmost edge of the flagstones. Gauging the width of the rug as he walked, he reckoned that if he were to move the whole rug a bit to the left, it should sit perfectly between the lines, maybe an inch gap on either side. He'd have to come down later and sort it. The keep's cleaners, for all he appreciated their graft and their willingness to clean up after his endless accidents, they never got things like this quite right. He'd come down to the servants' quarters to point out something that had been done wrong, a vase not centred on its plinth, a painting rotated a quarter-inch off-centre, and they'd apologise and set to fixing it with these bemused, suffering looks barely concealed on their faces. He just could not understand how people didn't see these things. So it was, with his eyes fixed firmly on the rightmost edge of the whole central flagstones, that he spotted a hole in the world, almost invisible in the crack between two of the dark granite slabs. Lulled by the rhythmic stepping and tapping of the staff, he began to visualise the keep's layout. Down the hall a ways, up the eastern stairs, turn right, come back on himself. His rooms would be... the door to his rooms would be almost directly above him now, the corridor overlapping a part of the ceiling above him in the hallway. If he stepped into this hole at just the right angle, with just the right force, he might be able to slide himself up there, passing through the ceiling, saving himself some time walking down the stairs and back. Pausing abruptly to inspect the hole more closely, he stumbled as the man behind him walked straight into him, knocking Vasily almost to the floor, the sudden absence of the wash of noise snapping him out of his reverie almost effectively as the impact had. "Mare's teeth, lad, are you daft?" the man thundered, dusting off the front of his robes as though Vasily's mere touch had dirtied them. "The hell do you think you're doing stopping like that? Could have had my damn eye out!" he roared, gesturing to the sharp-edged amethyst mounted atop his staff. Vasily didn't think it likely, considering the man was a good head shorter than the tip of the crystal, but a childhood full of casual beatings for such observations had cured him of his delusions of wit. "Apologies," he mumbled, not meeting the man's eye, turning and continuing to lead them further into the keep's corridors. An awkward minute of silence passed, the stumble instantly forgotten as he mentally made note of the hole's location. He'd have to come back later for testing. His previous indoor experiments had been varied, to say the least. He'd learned through grim experience the importance of starting out as gently as possible, his initial forays leading him ricocheting headfirst off the ceiling at a speed that left him mildly concussed, with the harsh stone floor possessing none of the gentle forgiveness you got from landing on grass. Worse still, the times some part of him or another had slid through the wall, the rest of his body stubbornly refusing to follow, his limbs grinding as the granite reasserted itself back into the world. Muscle pounded flat, bones cracking beneath the pressure of sharing the same theoretical space as several tons of rock, as he struggled to discorporate himself back out again. He shuddered, remembering the last time. His arm had been damn near soup when he'd finally got it free. He'd had to burn what was left of it in a fire, spinning a story to the healer about a fireball casting gone wrong. That had earned him a truly epic lecture from an incandescent Master Arturus about the importance of containment glyphs, and a largely incomprehensible diatribe about the importance of thermal venting runes, but that aside, he'd largely gotten away with it. Finally, they came to the iron gates that marked the entrance of the Great Hall, the two men following him as he strode towards his master. The two men stopped 10 paces from Master Arturus, who was seated in his chair atop a small dais in the centre of the hall. Vasily continued on, taking his place to the left of his master, and studied the two men properly for the first time. On the left, tall and rugged, with the tanned skin and muscular frame of a soldier. Indeed, he wore a sword at his waist, though his sharp eyes and the violet brooch pinned through his cape marked him as an alumnus of the Aelid Council. A mage, then, most certainly. His companion, who had blundered into Vasily in the hall earlier, needed no such close inspection to mark him as an arcane practitioner. The amethyst-topped staff of oak, the violet robes, the long grey beard. He couldn't have looked more like a wizard if he'd tried. The man looked like he cooked toast with a fireball. Representatives from the Aelid Council, Master Arturus, murmured Vasily, bending slightly to whisper in his master's ear. Yeah, said Master Arturus at an entirely unconcerned volume. No shit. Your wanton disregard for the Council's governance has gone too far, Arturus, declared the man on the left, unprompted. Vasily winced. The man hadn't called him master. The man was shockingly down to earth for one of the world's most powerful spellcasters, but he had a real chip on his shoulder about people forgetting his honorifics. The Council has sent me here to demand your presence before them, where you may answer for your transgressions, he finished gravely. Transgressions, yeah? Asked Arturus nonchalantly. All who study with the Council know of your heinous breaches of our moral code, he went on, chest swollen and eyes gleaming with righteous indignation. Your vile sorcery is a stain upon the noble arts, a mockery upon the beauty and nobility of our profession. Ah! Agreed his partner. There was a small, quiet moment as everyone processed the events of the previous second and a half. The man looked to his left, frowning at the empty spot where his companion had been standing a moment before. What have you done to my companion, Arturus? The man demanded, turning back. What foul magic is this? That's a little spell called Get Teleported 2 miles straight upwards, you fucking idiot, he intoned dryly. What, were you expecting me to wave my little wand around and shout fireball? He asked, his thick accent dripping with sarcasm. I mean, whose damn keep do you think you're in here? Arturus leaned forwards on his seat, and Vasily unconsciously leant backwards away from him. Foul magic? You want to talk foul magic? I've got wards in my entrance hall that cause instant blood clots in people who aren't welcome, he continued, his voice rising steadily. If I wasn't trying to make a point here, his voice rising further, he slammed his hands down on the seat of his chair for emphasis. You'd have had a fucking stroke before you'd finished dusting your shoes off. The man gulped visibly, but steeled himself and continued. I'm to bring you before the Council by force, if necessary, he said, placing his hand upon the pommel of his sword and sounding a whole lot more confident than he looked. Arturus fixed the man with a rueful gaze. The seconds passed with a thick, awkward silence, broken only by the faintest suggestion of screams starting from outside the keep's vaulted windows. Really? Spoke Arturus. Outside, the screaming grew louder and louder until, almost as if to punctuate his question, there was an impact on the ceiling of the hall, a sound like a mop bucket being emptied from a second-story window, and a sudden surcease to the screams. Dust shook loose from the ceiling by the impact floated serenely down upon the scene, accompanied by small chunks of stone and plaster, the light clattering of their impact seeming a cacophony in the deafening silence of the hall. Nobody moved for a long moment. Do you think, Master Arturus said gently, that you'd better leave now? The man nodded, ashen-faced, hand trembling white-knuckled on the pommel of his sword. And tell the Council, he spat the word, that I won't be appearing before them, or anyone for that matter, unless I choose it. The man nodded again. Arturus went on, poking himself in the chest heavily with his index finger. And I certainly won't be following their laws, and I absolutely, categorically won't be paying their fucking taxes, he finished heavily. Now, don't fool yourself for a single second that this is about morality. Those money-grubbing old swindlers want their tax money, and as far as they're concerned, I'm 20 years indebted. They send some lackey down here every few years to summon me. I bet they didn't tell you that, did they? The man shook his head mutely, sweat trickling down his face. No, I bet they didn't, because the last one went home with his knees and elbows swapped. Now, fuck off! The man all but sprinted out of the room. Sighing, Master Arturus turned to Vasily. Next time, Vasily, if you see him at the door, just pretend nobody's home. Once you start letting these people in, it never bloody ends, trust me. Yes, Master Arturus, said Vasily obediently, wiping the dust and stone chips from the shoulders of his robe. Now, go and tell the cleaner to fetch him up. The roof's one I want doing again. he added, turning back to squint at the silhouette of the soldier disappearing rapidly down the hallway. Of course, Master Artoris.